It's still rolling. Oh, okay. We're not totally switched over. Still dark. Okay, now we're here. Welcome to Exposition. This is a show about the art world in southeastern Ohio. You may not think there might be one, but there is. There's plenty of artists in the hills here. And today we have Benjy Davies, who is a professor and chairperson for the School of Arts and Letters here at the University of Rio Grande. Welcome.
Thanks, Mike.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I teach art, as Mike said. I teach art here at the University of Rio Grande. I'm also serving as an academic chair for arts and letters, which encompasses art, music, theater, communication, English, history, political science, Spanish, philosophy. Hope I'm not forgetting anybody. So I'm a teacher and a scholar and a chairperson, as well as being a visual artist.
Okay, so you're mostly into 2D art.
Yeah, primarily. My training was at the Ohio State University and at Ohio University. My undergraduate degree was in general fine arts, which was painting, drawing, and printmaking, and my graduate degree is in printmaking.
Okay. So what is printmaking? Is that all
Printmaking is a kind of a catch-all term for any kind of graphic arts in which an image is made on one surface and then transferred to another surface. So woodcuts, screen prints, lithographs, etchings, some other forms of printmaking. Those are the main kinds. Printmaking and its form, they call it the graphic arts. So it's kind of the precursor to what we call graphic design now. And there's a lot of overlap between graphic design and the graphic arts. All the things that are done in Photoshop were originally done with a camera or done with litho films in a dark room or something like that.
Right.
So.
And the room we're in now used to have a dark room where Pat is standing now. It used to be a dark room. This building was built in '88, and by the time the building was finished, we had moved to McIntosh.
Yeah, that's about the right time.
Started doing that. We built the dark room so you could. I can't remember there was a name of the printmaking film that you would use. That was basically it would go white or black.
Right.
So you would make your posters in a photographic process.
Right. Right, and we still do that in printmaking, and we still do some of that in what we call graphic design now as well. And so that shift happened, as you said, right around the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s.
And probably, I can't remember what the name of it is, the concert billboard signs would be one that somebody would have seen often.
And those would have been screen printed probably,
Screen
or
printed.
lithographically printed.
You know what I'm talking about, the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
There's a name for it.
The psychedelic concert posters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a show actually in San Francisco. My colleague Kevin Lyles and I went out to visit a sculptor in San Francisco named Fletcher Benton, and there was an exhibition of psychedelic artwork, and included a lot of those posters, Massoni and some of the other famous poster designers from that era.
Yeah.
And that was all done in the dark room or with hand stenciling and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was one thing I was trying to do. That's why it came up is I wanted to get the fonts for those things so I could reproduce that.
Oh yeah. Well, I teach a lot of that stuff, that kind of technology in graphic design. I teach most of the graphic design coursework here, and so we'll work with fonts and work with fonts typesetting and fontography and posters and those kinds of things. But we do most of it on the computer.
What program do you use?
Photoshop, Illustrator, the Adobe Suite, Page,
Okay.
InDesign, that kind of thing.
Okay. All right. So what you said? What was your undergraduate in painting?
Painting and drawing.
Okay. So what drew you to take that other than like history or math or anything else? What?
I don't really know.
Did you try something else before that?
I started in art education.
Mm-hmm.
To be a high school art teacher, and I didn't care for the education coursework very much, and I didn't feel like it was giving me enough time in the studio to pursue the imagery that I wanted to pursue. Mm-hmm. And so I switched to a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree for an undergraduate degree, and then continued my study at the master's level, the MFA level.
Now, is there something you like to draw? I know, growing up, Valerie, who's usually on the show, who can't join us today, her thing was horses. So she just loved to draw horses. Is there something that you were drawn to draw?
No, I just started with a lot of figurative work, portraiture. I work in a variety of subject matters now. I'm currently doing a lot of landscapes, abstracted landscapes currently. So they're landscapes, but they're not perfectly representational landscapes. There's some patterning or textures in there that lead them away from a traditional photographic representation, which is a little bit odd because they're often photographically based. I'll work from a photograph. I also draw from life, and I do a lot of landscape drawing directly from life, so there's no photograph involved.
Now, I don't know if it's true. I've tried to do just a very small bit of, I used to draw people and stuff, but like a caricature. The hardest thing for me to do is to do myself or my children, because I don't look at them objectively.
Yeah, that's true.
I kind of know them and see through their exterior.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's difficult to draw people, especially, and it's even more difficult to draw people you know, because when you see them, you think about, as you said, all these other things you know about them, and so your expectation of what they look like is not always met by what they actually look like.
Right. You know, a stranger comes up and you think, oh, they got big ears or big nose or, whatever.
Right.
And you can play on that, but
Right.
your own family is very hard.
It's very difficult, yeah. Yeah, when you see the picture, you see the child, you think about, oh, that time you were at the beach, or the struggle they had in third grade, or whatever. And when a stranger sees them, they just see the shape of their face or their ears or whatever you say.
Right, just the basics. So I think you brought in some examples of your artwork, and maybe we can talk about that and some of the methods behind that. And I saw a lot of your stuff is self-portraiture, I think.
There's a lot of self-portraiture. This picture we're seeing here is a project I started in March of 2008. And I think in the slide it says it continues till 2016. It still continues. I've been drawing a small drawing every day for almost 10 years now, nine and a bit years now. So I've got over 3,000 drawings. I show these in groups. Here are some of them shown in small groups. But I show these in groups of up to 100 drawings at a time. Sometimes,
how do you find the time to do that?
I draw in the evening usually.
Okay.
After I've done with everything else. Not always in the evening, but it's often this thing that I look forward to. Oh, at least I get to draw for an hour today.
Okay.
After all the other things, academic meetings, paperwork, and et cetera. So as you can see, sometimes there's themes. In this one, you see some African art themes. Other times, current events. There's David Bowie who died. It looks like I was visiting Fletcher Benton. There's a picture of something in his Fletcher Benton's house. And so various other things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are the inspirations?
I've drawn just about everything. I had a series of celebrities. I had a series of famous presidents, famous people with big beards. I did all the letters of the alphabet. I did Facebook friends with sunglasses. A lot of pictures of running and
I see
food.
running injury, maybe.
Running injuries, yes. There's some Welsh sheep.
What does that say?
Welsh sheep.
Okay.
There's some people from my high school. I must have gone to a high school reunion around that time. And
where does the bricks come from? You thinking thick as a brick?
I don't remember. The drawings just every day there's another drawing. So I don't know what.
Is it hard to come up with something?
No.
No? Okay.
No, there's always something to draw.
Yeah, I always look for.
There's a fair amount of abstraction too.
Right. I always look for, when I was in art class, I would just, okay, we're going to go outside today and draw something. So, I would.
There's always something.
I would try and find something like take off my shoe and put it on a rock. Okay, I'm drawing my shoe.
There is always something to draw. Always something. This one.
Is this
this one on the bottom? No, it's ink on paper. This one on the bottom right here that has OAC in it. This was when I was submitting a series of these drawings to apply for a grant, and so I put in one that says, "Gee, I hope I get this OAC grant," and then sent it to them for the grant.
Oh.
I did, which was good, but that was always kind of fun.
Did you get the grant?
I did get the grant.
Cool.
But when I show these, I often will have a whole wall of them, and then I'll leave one off, and then I'll draw something that's in the gallery, something else that's in the gallery, and put it in there. So at one point, one of the drawings said, "Turn around." And you turn around, and what you had behind you was what I had drawn in that picture.
Okay.
So it's kind of fun to play with those. Mm-hmm. So here's kind of a stack of them. You can see the number. These are all, finished drawings. So
Do you do something with those? I guess you
I show them. I've also made several books with reproductions of them. I may have a slide of the book covers. You can get the books. Yeah, you can get the books on Amazon. And so there'll be maybe 400 drawings in that book. Every 1,000 drawings, I try to do another book.
Okay.
So I'm a little behind.
Is there a text with that?
A little
explaining
bit,
something?
A little bit of text, yeah, explaining the project.
Okay.
This is something that I try to encourage my students to do, this kind of connection to your artwork, that to be drawing every day or to be thinking about your work or be investing in your work every day, whatever that thing is. If you're a musician, to practice every day. If you're a writer, to write every day. It gives you a sense of engagement with your craft that you wouldn't otherwise get, I feel. For me, it's been very useful because it's hard to find a lot of time. I'm working on a painting in my studio now that's 3 foot by 8 foot, and I've got 150 hours in it, and it's not done. It's hard to get that time during the academic year when you're very busy with meetings and classes and all the other things. And so this daily drawings project has given me the opportunity to make a really large body of work out of little tiny pieces of time. So.
Hey, like another thing, you know, I'm a photographer, so I've been trying to go out and take pictures, and you know, I take the camera bag on the motorcycle and just head somewhere and try and take some stuff. And sort of like the self-portrait thing, finding things to take a picture of in your hometown. You know, I know where everything is, but you kind of take it for granted. You don't see it as somebody from the outside. And so just trying to brainstorm and say, what can I do that might be original and not what everybody else has done? So,
but that connection, that bringing the camera with you, that connection is strong.
and I've been trying to play with some other things like long exposures and some different techniques. What else do we have?
So this is a painting I did at the McDowell Colony in New Hampshire. They have a residency program, and you have to apply to be accepted, but they fund you to stay there for 3 to 6 weeks to work in upstate New Hampshire and put you up in a cabin and let you make work. And so at the time I was on a sabbatical, so I had a semester off from teaching duties. And I wanted to shift back into landscape painting, which I had done 20 years previously, but had not done for a long time. And so this is this one, and I think there are a few other pictures from that series.
Is that a beaver house?
No, it's just a pile of
sticks.
Pile of lumber that someone's going to burn.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a.
It looked like a beaver house.
It does look like that. I was mostly just interested in texture and pattern and shape, and you can see that there's a fair amount of abstraction in that, in the lower part of that, the weeds and such.
Do you hide stuff in it like some artists do?
No, there's nothing hidden in it. Yeah, and this is just another picture of the woods, and you can see some of the abstraction.
What's the orange stakes for?
They were tying up some small trees or something. I don't remember.
Got another one there?
This is the piece I'm working on now. It's not a good photograph. It's just a snapshot from the studio. It's 3 foot by 8 foot.
So it's 2 panels.
2 panels, yeah. You can see there's a line in the middle. And so it's a very, very time-consuming, very highly detailed photographic reference, but it's shifting significantly from the photograph. I'm really interested in that break between abstraction and representation. So it is a representation of just some weeds by the side of the road, actually in Wales, not in America.
Did you take a photograph to work by?
Yes, yeah, it's drawn from a photograph. Yeah.
Okay, but it's not exactly like the photograph.
No, it's shifting now. It's starting to change. The texture, the tones are starting to shift, and so that's where I'm interested in. I'm interested in the photograph itself is fairly abstract, as you can see from the image. And so I'm really interested in that break between the image being a representation of a thing and the image just being shape and tone and color. There are a couple of contemporary artists that I'm looking at here. One is Chuck Close, who has done a lot of that, breaking that up. He does large-scale photorealist portraiture, but when you get close, it breaks. Another one is Gerhard Richter, who's also doing some of that. And so those two are kind of influencing the way I'm thinking about this painting quite a lot.
I'll have to Google that and see what that's all about.
It's nice stuff.
All right, we're going to take just a short break, and we'll be back in just a second.
What's the break for?
Okay, welcome back, and we're here with Benjy Davies, a professor of art here at the University of Rio Grande. And we've been talking about your painting. Now, the last one we were talking about was a painting.
Yes. Yes.
Do you prefer oils or acrylics, or what do you like?
Both. The last one was both acrylic and oil. It starts with a couple layers of acrylic paint to block in everything, and then for the more detailed work, I'll switch to oil because it has a longer working time. It doesn't dry quite as quickly, so you can kind of blend things together. Also, oils, you can get a little bit more transparency, so you can layer transparent layers. You can do a little bit with acrylic, but it's a little harder to work with.
Yeah. You like watercolors?
I don't do watercolor.
Yeah, that was always frustrating for me. I just like, when you put it on there, it's done, and it's like, I can't deal with that. I always liked oil because you could move it around and change things, and you had like a week to deal with it.
In America, there's a stronger tradition of oil painting than watercolor. In England, there's a much stronger watercolor painting tradition. There's a little bit of a prejudice against watercolor in America in terms of being fine art.
Yeah, because you buy watercolors for your kids.
That's the impression in America. In
Right.
England, that's not the case. In England, watercolor is just as significant as oil painting.
Right. So what are we looking at here?
This is some work that I did with my colleague Kevin Lyles. The bottom is a painting that I did, and the top is actually two cast bronze sticks. And those are not actual sticks. I do a lot of drawings with sticks, and
You drawing sticks or drawing with sticks?
with sticks. I'll draw
Okay.
I'll draw pictures with the sticks by sharpening the stick and dipping it in ink.
Okay.
And so this is a combination of two things together. Kevin and I, who teaches sculpture and ceramics here, did a project together called Paired Landscapes. So Kevin and I were working together. We went to Wales and collected images of Wales and drew in Wales as well and sculpted. And then came back and made these things where we were pairing my work with his work and images of Wales with images of America. As you know, this area is settled partially by the Welsh, and there's a lot of Welsh people here. And so this is pairing Wales and America and pairing Kevin and I's work. This is a tidal pool, which is the paper casting, the white part around that Kevin did, and then the interior part is an island. This is a painting that I did. These are actually both Welsh scenes, Aberavon area.
Are they part of the same scene?
No. The surrounding area is Aberavon, and the bottom one is Pembrokeshire, I think.
So I wasn't sure if maybe
It was
that
not- it was
texture
not- yeah.
was of that.
No, it's not the same.
Okay.
No. This is a bridge in Llanidloes, which is a village in Wales. And that's the inside area. That's Kevin sculpted that. And then the surrounding area is a painting of the Memorial Bridge, Silver Bridge.
Okay,
here in
well, I thought
Belfast.
that looked like Silver Bridge. Like, wow,
Yeah.
that place looks just like ours.
And so the two bridges from two different parts of the
Oh,
world.
okay, I see it. The other one's stone, right?
It's cast graphite.
Well, I mean the bridge
The
itself.
stone. The bridge is stone. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Cast graphite?
Graphite coated plaster, maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay.
This is an interesting piece. This is, while we were in Wales, we stayed with a couple of artists there and visited with them, Brian Thomas and Andrew Baldwin. This is Brian's work. He's a sculptor. This is 3D printed. He's trained in classical sculptural techniques, clay and stone and all those things, but he also works in high-tech stuff, and this is a 3D printed model sculpture that he made by making something and then scanning it and then printing it. So it's partially hand sculpted, partially a plastic toy, and so he's made this collage and then recreated it in plastic.
Okay. So would that be a sculpture-like idea with printmaking?
Yeah, kind of.
You
in
make a
sense.
sculpture and then
Yeah,
you reproduce it?
In a sense, yes. Yeah. This is the other Welsh artist that was part of the show. This is Andrew Baldwin. He's an etcher and teaches at Aberystwyth University and has his own shop in Trefigluis. And this is a scene of some Welsh sheep.
I like that. That sheep is like what are you looking at here?
Yeah, he's a
We're having a
great
private
artist.
time here. Now, what was this medium?
This is an etching.
Okay, how do you do an etching?
You coat a metal plate with an acid-resistant substance and then scratch through it, and then etch it in acid. So the acid eats away the metal to making little grooves, and then ink is rubbed in those grooves. It's a little harder to explain in words than to see it done.
Okay.
Andrew's an interesting fellow. In addition to being an artist, he's also an inventor, and he's invented a less toxic ground for doing this process to make it safer for himself and his students and other artists to work with, and he sells that worldwide. And so it's been fun. These are some prints that I've made. This is some older work. This, I said earlier, I did a lot of portraiture. And so this is a picture of my daughter. This is a lithograph. And I think the next one's a picture of my mother. This is also a lithograph. So this is drawn on a stone, a special kind of stone, and then that ink is transferred. That drawn ink is then transferred to paper, so you can make more than one copy of that.
Okay, so it's not carved in stone and
No,
then printed with
it's drawn on stone.
Okay.
The drawing itself is reproduced.
Okay.
And again, this is one. When I was on sabbatical, I did a number of trips. This was printed in the Cleveland Institute of Art. I know some people there, and I visited them. This was drawn with a stick, and then I drew the stick underneath. So I went to that tree, pulled a stick out, dipped it in ink, drew on the stone with the ink. That's the drawing above. And then with the drawing pencils, I drew a picture of the stick that I had drawn with. So it's kind of wraps around itself a little bit. This is just some images of how prints are made. You can see this is me printing from a stone, and you can see the drawing is on the stone, and then you put a paper on it and run it through the press, and that pulls the ink off, reproducing it.
And you can do that over and over?
Over and over again. So this is a small stone. This is kind of what a stone might look like. This is a fairly small one. This is actually a fossil of a dinosaur called Archaeopteryx lithographica, meaning Archaeopteryx that was found in lithographic limestone. And so I was challenged to make a lithographic print on an ostrich egg for a project called Hatching Across Ohio Art 360. I can't remember the exact title of the project. A man in Columbus named Charles Bluestone has organized a group of, I want to say about 80 Ohio artists to make art on ostrich eggs. And he challenged me to make a lithograph on an ostrich egg, which I eventually did. And so I printed on very thin paper images of this Archaeopteryx lithographica, printed it all over the outside of that egg, adhered the paper to that egg, and then nested it in a nest of stones made of lithographic limestone.
Oh, okay.
So I was trying to combine the idea of where that dinosaur came from with the stone and the printing method to make my contribution to that project.
So I imagine that's not a hard-boiled egg.
It's an ostrich egg. It's
right, but they take the stuff out of it.
Oh, yeah, they take the stuff out of it. Yeah. That show is. I'm trying to think of where it will be next. I think it'll be in Zanesville next. It's a wonderful show.
Now, do you teach anything about the art of seeing? How do you finding things to take pictures of, or finding things to draw? How do you go and see what would inspire you or cause you to draw that?
We do some of that. This semester in my digital photography course, I broke the course up into a series of one-week assignments based around formal elements, which what you would say the art of seeing or what you're seeing. And so 1 week we would do high contrast. Next week we do low contrast. The week after that we do high saturation, low saturation, rule of thirds, asymmetry, various concepts like that. So that kind of gets you into that. The other side of that is you're talking about what to draw, what to take a picture of, what the subject matter is that I would also combine that with themed portfolios. So the portfolio might be old and young. So they'd have to take pictures of old buildings and young buildings and pair them. Or it would be transformations, where they'd have to take pictures in which an object was transformed by light or placement or composition or whatever. So I was trying to combine some of those elements. So we're both the formal and the conceptual elements, which I think gets to some of that.
Yeah. And I've seen people, I don't know if you had done that or if it was Jim Allen, like take a whole, maybe it was you, take a whole series, maybe 50 pictures of the same thing.
Yes, yeah. That's the transformation project, where you try to transform something by taking many pictures of it.
And in doing that, you learn of different angles and the light and all that.
Sure, how all of those things affect photography. I think it's interesting, then you start thinking about photography, just as with this painting and abstraction. People say, oh, photography is real, but once you start taking pictures, you start realizing photography distorts everything. Photography is not really how we see things.
Oh, depending on the lenses.
It's a complete abstraction. Well, for one, it's only one eye. And for two, it's flat. And that's not how we see things. And so that shifts things a lot. So it's a different way of thinking. I think before photography invented, we had a different way of understanding visual perception than we do now. Photography, I think, has changed the way we see.
And how?
We believe things are flat. And we believe things that monocular vision, that one eye of looking at things. And we believe things are still. And I think all those things make a difference. So I was watching a clip from Good Morning America, and there are all these people waving outside the window. I think that sometimes we think something's not really quite real until it's on TV.
Yeah.
And so that shift of direct interpretation versus a mediated or a one step removed, we're not viewing life like this, we're viewing it through that screen.
Right. And
that shifts.
Maybe that comes too where when you visit a place that you've taken a picture of, or you take that person to there, and they say, well, the picture didn't do this justice.
Right.
That's the disconnect.
Right. And so that's a shift. And I think what artists try to do is they try to find a way to show what they're seeing to someone else. That's why we make the picture.
Okay. Well, thanks for being on, and thank you for watching Exposition, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Mike.